Welcome to Kink Geek with your hosts, Step and Tams.
We're here to take a nerd's eye view of everything from sexuality to pop culture and whatever we hit along the way.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a real good time. Hey everyone!
Hello!
What was that?
Well, it's been a while, so I figured we need a longer hello.
Oh, I see. We're back!
We are. We're back and ready to... I'm actually kind of hungry, but we're gonna,
do this now while we have a moment. Yeah.
Oh, it has been a long month.
And, yeah. So we've been apartment hunting, as you guys know. Mm-hmm. And we've come across some of the most frustrating things in house hunting.
Did we talk about...
We talked a little bit, I think.
Okay.
But some of the stuff that had been happening up until we found a place was things like showing up and the person who owned the home or who was showing the home doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And there's a mess there. And
4 other people show up also to see the home.
Yeah. Or, calling a huge company that has like 60 buildings in the city and it taking them 3 weeks to get back to you. Or, so it's been unfun.
But we are done. We're done with that shit.
We have an apartment. We're going to be moving in 2 weeks, so things are still a little bit sketchy.
But we no longer have to run out and, go looking.
That was the problem, is because we never knew when somebody was going to message me back and say, oh, I can show it to you now if you can be here in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So the place we have is a 3-bedroom, mm-hmm. and it sounds strange to say it's a little small. It's just strangely shaped, but...
all the bedrooms are small, and we would prefer, one large room, mm-hmm. But this was what was affordable.
Yeah, and it does have bay windows, mm-hmm. which I'm super stoked about. It is on the main floor, and it opens to the outside. It has its own door, plus one into the building, so... Mm-hmm. And by bay windows, I mean there's actually a window seat, and there might be one in the bedroom, too. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah.
I don't remember.
So I'm so excited. But at the same time, we have step-parents. Your stepdad and your mom are home.
Step's parents?
Yeah, Step's parents. And your stepdad's getting ready to go for hip surgery on Thursday, so that is crazy.
Yeah, joy.
And then we had car issues. Oy vey. It was fun. We changed out brakes and calipers, and could have been more expensive if you'd actually taken it to the mechanic, though. So
yeah, it could have been less expensive too. You never know. But anyway, we managed to do it ourselves. Well, yep. My stepfather is good with all that stuff, and I have done brakes in the past and things
and I
like
spent
that, so.
a morning out helping out too. Mm-hmm. I got the jack underneath and I jacked up the jack, and it was fun and gross and dirty.
Fun, you say? Well, I'll keep that in mind.
No, in retrospect, it was fun once. It was fun once.
Next time we need to do some car work.
No, I'm good. That was fine. So, yeah, so it's been super stressful, and we keep wanting to find some time to do the podcast because it is a priority, but as much as we really wanted to adhere to try to keep a regular schedule, sometimes you just can't because things come up.
Yeah, life gets in the way.
Yep, but hopefully in the next 3 or 4 weeks, in the next month, things will finally find a rhythm.
Well, either way, we're back. So,
yeah.
we the main stressors have been figured out and are no longer up in the air. So, we are now back. Mm-hmm. We have at least our regular rhythm back.
Mm-hmm. You know what I am looking forward to the most, I think, in the apartment?
What's that?
Well, 2 things. One, we're going to be able to play without other people in the house, which will be fun. And 2, we're going to have a more dedicated recording space, which will be nice.
That is true. With the way it is here, I mean, we've talked about it before, when the rents are in the country, they go in and out, and there's not a clear noise barrier, so it's very difficult to find a time where they're not banging around or asking for things or doing whatever. And it's just privacy and dedicated space is going to be better in our new location. And I'm really happy about that.
Me too. Now the only downside is that Salem is going to be missing his cat friend, so we're going to have to give him all sorts of extra snuggles.
Yeah, that's true. He's going to be all alone.
He's never been alone before.
He's never been alone before?
Nope. He's always had a best friend. Before Enigma, it was Milo. So we'll see how obnoxious he becomes.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him a stuffed friend.
A stuffed friend? Yeah.
So, let's see. In other news, I think we talked about the fact that we were doing intermittent fasting.
Did we?
Yeah, I think so in the last episode. So we are still doing it, except we're a little more relaxed on the weekend. Usually Sunday, because we like to be able to have brunch.
Yeah, well, we've been a little relaxed the last few weeks with everything being difficult. We've
had to eat like a little bit later at times, but for the most part, I'm trying to at least keep the habit, and it's still been fine. We are cutting down carbs. I'm trying all sorts of new recipes while I can. Like yesterday we did curried chicken and sugar snap peas over cauliflower rice, and it turned out really good.
It was really good.
And then earlier in the week I did a teriyaki chicken over cauliflower as fried rice, and that was also quite good. So we're not giving up rice entirely, just like we're not giving up pizza entirely. But if we can replace some of the instances of these foods and use things like cauliflower to make crusts or to make rice, then it's a big step. So it was delicious. Oh my goodness. So yeah, so that's that. I did want to talk a little bit about things that we've been doing lately, geeking out about.
Yeah?
Yeah. So we've been watching some television.
And by television, of course, you mean Netflix.
Netflix, yeah.
Yeah. The whole Marvel series that's on Netflix, the Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage.
Yeah.
We have been working our way through while we've been, packing and organizing for the move and whatnot. And, you wanted to talk about them a little bit?
Yeah. So we started with Daredevil. And
strong start.
Daredevil, the stories are fine. I'm enjoying the show, but what I noticed is that Matt is fine. Like, the actor's good. He's all right, but I really don't care that much about Daredevil himself. I like Foggy, his best friend.
Yeah.
He's the reason why I'm like, let's watch another episode. He's a far more interesting character. Him and Karen are much more interesting than Daredevil himself.
Yeah, well, they went like super dark with the Daredevil character, and honestly, I don't find him that interesting.
No, I find that most of what he does is punches people in the face.
Yeah.
And that gets to be a bit much for me. I like combat in stuff, but that bare-fisted constant punching, and that's pretty much all it is. It wears a little thin at times.
Yeah.
So we watched that, and what did we watch? The first 2 seasons? There was 2 seasons, right?
We watched the first season, then we started on the second season, and we were like, ugh, this is so heavy. And so we moved on to Jessica Jones instead.
Yes.
Which is, so we've watched the first season of the Daredevil and then went on to Jessica Jones. And we'll go back to the second season of Daredevil because there's also Iron Fist, which I don't know if I'm interested in or not. And then there's the Defenders, which I am.
Yeah. So Jessica Jones, I quite enjoyed. I can understand some people have a criticism that she's a little typical of strong females, that they must be cranky, crotchety, and surly in order to be strong. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the character is fairly well constructed.
Yeah, I mean, she is that archetype, but that's a common archetype that I've actually witnessed in human beings.
Oh, I know people like that, yeah. But David Tennant, he is my doctor from Doctor Who. He's my favorite doctor.
Of course.
And, he's so good. I thought, I'm gonna have a hard time disliking this character because I love David Tennant so much. Oh no, no. And there's a point at which I found a little bit of sympathy for him because of the way the plot turns a little bit, and then absolute and utter disgust. And he's really good, so
yeah.
But I think for me, I have most enjoyed Luke Cage so far.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And it's fun to see that these series all have their own they're in the same universe, they're in the same world. The characters cross over, but the shows have their own aesthetic. Like Daredevil is kind of a superhero-y, kind of Dark Knight-esque world. Jessica Jones is almost a punk cover of a film noir, you know, which actually makes it sound more interesting than it is, but it's
kind
of
a
good.
40s gumshoe kind of.
Well, it kind of trying to be that, but also trying to be updated superhero-y. But Luke Cage is the one that from beginning to end seems most to know what it is, and that's like a blaxploitation film from the 1970s.
Except there's no exploiting going on in this.
Yeah,
I hate that term because
really?
It's just anything that has exploitation in the phrase just sets me wrong. It implies something that is all based on stereotypes, and I don't feel that this really is. I think that there are some very well-rounded, interesting characters, but I get what you mean.
I think they're playing on those stereotypes, though. Like, everything from the opening music to the villains of the piece are very archetypal from that kind of cinema.
No, I get what you're saying. Like as a look and a feel, absolutely. Yeah. But the characters themselves, I think they've done a really good job
of translating from comics to a very culturally aware kind of series.
Yeah. It's really refreshing to see. I cannot think. Are there any Caucasian characters?
There are a couple of cops. There's the there's the tech nerd,
and there's her partner.
Yep.
And it's refreshing. It's nice to see other people represented, and it's a good story. Alfre Woodard. I love her. I think she's fantastic, and she's a deplorable person in this. Although they let you see where it all comes from, and that's what I really like. Like even with Cottonmouth, you see the evolution from child who wants something better out of his life to what he is. And I also really like the Shades character. I thought he was really cool.
He grew on me a lot.
Yeah,
anyway,
the actor's very skilled. So.
If you are going to watch any of those on Netflix, I highly recommend Luke Cage. I think it's the most interesting of the three series, followed by Jessica Jones, and then followed by Daredevil in sort of a farther third than the other two. But the Foggy character is really interesting in that. I kind of crush on him.
Yeah, me too. And I guess the other thing, we went out and saw It last night, or the other night.
Yeah, we did.
Which was, for me, I'm a huge King fan. I read the book when I was 10 or 11. I saw the original miniseries many, many times. And I was trepidatious when I saw that Bill Skarsgård was cast, and then I saw the costume. I'm like, okay.
I don't think you were ever trepidatious.
I was a little bit.
Really?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Just because he's really pretty. I had no doubt about his ability to act.
Tim Curry wasn't really pretty.
Well, he was a little older, and he was not that model-esque, pouty-lipped, cheekbones you could grate cheese on kind of look.
Really?
Not at the time he did it.
Okay.
Maybe way back, but not when he did it. But I had no reason to worry. It was very, it had a feel like Stand By Me, that the way they were able to take a bunch of kids and make them feel really connected. And it was very creepy. And there were some good jump scares.
Yeah, King writes kids really well.
Yeah.
And I feel like the movie It was, if King had written Stranger Things,
yeah, or
it would have ended up kind of like that.
I think Stranger Things, and I think they've said is
an homage to...
Well, they use the same font that King uses in his books, so it's not surprising.
So if you at all enjoyed that, you'd probably enjoy It.
Yeah, it's good. I want to see it again. But I also want to see Mother is also coming out this week. That's the new Jennifer Lawrence horror film.
I know nothing about it.
It looks... early reviews are saying it's terrifying.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Good time for scary movies right now.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, we are coming up, it's the middle of September.
I know.
We are moving on October the 1st, so we may be well ensconced in our new place in time for a Halloween party. We'll see.
That'll be exciting. So, so yeah, we've been filling what little time we have with interesting pursuits. So, yeah. So we're going to get to our main topic, which is the dangers of labels. We're going to just take a quick look at what labeling can do that is not so good, and what labeling can do that, is helpful. So, what labels are we talking about?
So, we actually wrote these notes, or had this concept a while ago, and then it's taken a while to get it together. So I'm trying to remember what the inspiration for this topic was.
It was something on a group that I'm in, and it was something about how doms can't be a certain thing because they are doms, and you're not a true submissive if you don't do this thing, or you can't be you must be a masochist if you allow people to apply pain and derive any sort of pleasure from it. So it's these things, and I was like, you know what? Let's have a look at this and see exactly what's going on.
Okay. Because contrary to how it's going to sound for the rest of the episode, I actually am not one of the detractors who doesn't like labels. I think labeling things is kind of important to put a context onto them.
I think it can very much be, yeah.
But they can also do harm, and that's what we're here to talk about. So the labels, dom, sub, masochist, and the further labels that go into BDSM, to some extent, there hasn't been a common definition to these things. And I think we've talked about that before, because there's no open scientific body of study who's defined all these things to the satisfaction of everyone involved.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's part of the problem. So you have to wonder, why are we doing this? Why do we bother? And for me, the two very most obvious reasons are, like you said, it's a shortcut to help identify what you're about, what you like, what a thing is. It also helps to create a sense of community. I am a kinkster. You are a kinkster. We have something in common. I am a dom. You are a dom. We have something in common. It gives you a jump-off point for understanding.
Yeah, but at the same time, it can also create false separations between people in the community, because I guess it's the danger of micro-labeling. Like, when you get into further delineations, it becomes more difficult to say, well, you can't be this because you don't like these same things as me.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So what's wrong with labeling? And exactly what you're saying, it does not tell the whole story. There are never enough labels to cover everyone. And it does encourage exclusion. You're not a masochist? Well, then... Or you say you're not a masochist? Then you're not this. Or you can't be this if you're not this. And that kind of stuff. When you start putting steadfast kind of labeling on people, you run the risk of people being excluded. And unfortunately, there's not a ton of ways around this, because labels are part of how we operate as a society. But there are other ways that we can help, I think, with things like this. So one of the biggest things that you hear, I'm sure you've heard it 100 times in BDSM, is when they're talking about a label and they are saying, okay, you're a dominant, that's your label, but you're fake because you do this thing incorrectly.
You're not a real this or that. Not a real submissive because you are bratty, or you're not a real dom. Actually, that's really important. This is something that I have covered in other topics, like I've written about this some before. There's a danger in saying that someone is... That behavior means they're not a dom, they're an abuser, you know? Mm-hmm. What's missing there is that someone can be both.
Absolutely.
Or they can be neither. But it's really not helpful to say, well, you're not a real dom because you don't follow the rules of consent. What you really should be thinking about is not saying they're fake or not real, but they're a bad dom.
Yeah, that's the problem that you're finding a lot in not just what we're talking about, but let's face it, the buzzword for 2017 is fake. Fake news.
Fake news is... This is a great example, actually. Your fake news was a quote that has gotten a lot of traction. It's far clearer to say, you're a bad news source. You're a bad source of information. Mm-hmm. To say something is fake means it's inauthentic, but in the cases where we're talking about these labels, that doesn't exactly apply. At least not 100% to anything. And
oftentimes, fake denotes, that it's coming from a nefarious place. Like, you're a fake submissive. It not only implies that they aren't doing that role right, they are mislabeled, but they're doing it for a purpose or for a bad reason. And it's just not a great place to be starting conversations from.
It's hard, especially in that case, because if you hear someone say, well, you're not a real submissive, or they're not a real submissive, you're instantly put into the mindset of, well, you can't say that. And you know what? In most cases, that's right. You can't say that because you don't know the whole story. But there are some cases in which I think that could be accurate if someone just doesn't know what role actually suits them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the thing is...
Sorry, can I say something else?
Absolutely.
Especially in the case of someone is a masochist, so they think automatically that makes them a submissive.
Yeah. That's a really good... I've heard that a lot.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't even think about. Well, the masochist receives pain from the sadist, so that's a dominant submissive relationship. And that's something that I think has been very damaging for a lot of people. You don't have to be a submissive to be a masochist. And I think it's just sort of assumed that that's the role. So in that case, maybe you're not a real submissive just because you're a masochist. That doesn't mean you can't also be a submissive. And to say someone, well, you're bad at being a submissive or you're a bad submissive, that's where this labeling doesn't really work correctly. But to say someone is a bad dominant because they don't have the skills or tools required to be a dominant, that's far more effective.
And that's kind of one of the big points that we want to get to, is that, yes, sometimes, people not not matching a label oftentimes is just you're not adhering to what somebody else's belief that label means is. Mm-hmm. So you and I may have very different ideas about what constitutes this particular thing. Mm-hmm. But there's also a point to be made, and unfortunately this comes up a lot in DOMs, mostly because of the damage that can be done by somebody who, like, there's less likely to be damage done by a submissive who is uneducated, although to themselves, absolutely. But you hear of it more with dominants who don't know. And I don't think it's so much being, fake dom as being uneducated. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've also talked about this before, mm-hmm. but it's important to reiterate. People who are uneducated and are afraid of being seen as uneducated or seen as bad or not proper or wrong, who put their ego ahead of their learning mm-hmm. Because of fear in many cases, these are the people who are going to have the most trouble, mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon to see someone being too afraid to ask questions, mm-hmm. too afraid to learn, because they don't want to be seen as someone who can't be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. So that's another place where this fake label does a lot of harm.
Absolutely. And it's something you see come up. I saw a post from a dominant who, his reason for posting was that he was upset at his submissive, who has been in the lifestyle for 20 or more years. Mm-hmm. He is very, very new. And he doesn't, from what he has posted, appear to have much knowledge about it. He hasn't done much reading. He hasn't experienced much except for, this is what's hot. And his complaint was that his submissive was offering him direction, not topping from the bottom, but telling him, well, these are some of the things that you might want to look at looking up and looking into. And he said, I'm the dominant. She needs to learn to keep her mouth shut. How do I tell her that to make her understand? And of course, everybody was like, you don't? Bad attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, as a submissive, if your relationship is such that she is not supposed to be whatever, that's one thing. But if you don't know things, it's really dangerous to just close yourself off from people who have more experience.
Yeah, and that's the fear I was talking about, because in this particular Dom's case, he's not going to learn anything new if he's going to close himself off from that information. Mm-hmm. The source of it shouldn't matter. You can learn from someone who is submitting to you without any threat to your authority. Mm-hmm. Being in control doesn't mean knowing more or always being right. No. It means having the control.
Yeah.
And part of that is about being offered that mm-hmm. control. And if you're not willing to respect that, then that's not going to be offered for very long, mm-hmm.
Now, some people offered the advice of, then you should be looking to somebody, another dominant, to help guide you, to offer you this information that you do need. Mm-hmm. And maybe you shouldn't be playing with her right now, because if you're having these kinds of problems, and you have this inability to communicate with her in this manner, then maybe look to forums or look to FetLife and try to find somebody that you can talk to who can offer you information without you feeling bad about it, yeah. I guess. So.
I still feel like if you're getting into BDSM, it's a lot better to come in as in a submissive role, mm-hmm. because it's easier to learn, mm-hmm. not because submissives have to know less, but because it is easier to learn in that role, and then gradually gain more control as you gain more knowledge and experience. Mm-hmm. And that also doesn't mean that all submissives should graduate into being dominants, but that it's much easier to learn where you want to be and where you're suited to be if you start from the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I really want to work on my switchy top side, but I'm very glad that I have experience as a submissive, because I feel that it gives me compassion, which I think you really need. Because
absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Empathy and just personally feeling what it's like is important, I feel, as a dominant.
I agree. So, I guess the takeaway from talking about labels is to look deeper. It's like with anything, but I think it's really important in BDSM to look deeper than to take the time to look at what is behind the label. Because, especially when you're new, you gravitate towards something that seems like it fits. And don't be shocked or whatever if you're new and you find that the label you take right now is not the label you're going to want on you in 6 months. And that's okay. I was with a partner who was certain he was a dominant. That was his role. And then after a lot of introspective searching and experiences, he realized that he is a sadistic top. He can top, but he's not comfortable with what comes with being a dominant. And he, in fact, is a switch as well. Like, he enjoys the bottom aspect of it. And he was afraid at first to actually admit it because, well, I've been labeled this, so everybody thinks this is what I am. And if I say I'm not, they're going to think I don't know anything. Where I think the opposite is actually the case, is you learn more about yourself.
And on the flip side of that, it's also very possible to start out as a bad dom or a bad sub and then become a good dom through practice and training. Labels don't have to stick forever, but they can stick and be adapted. They're adaptable. Labels are not permanent. They're not chiseled in stone. They can be applied and then the opposite of applied.
Removed?
Removed.
Wow, it's been a while, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's been a long week. Or a long month, if you prefer. Depending on situation and circumstance.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's very good,
So a bit of a shorter cast this week, but we're slowly getting back into the swing of things. We'll be in full swing here once we move finally into our new place, our new studio.
Absolutely.
But we wanted to get back at it.
Yeah, we missed doing this.
And this was more, I mean, we could go further in depth on this topic, and we probably will. Yeah. But we kind of wanted to have this public service announcement out there.
Stimulate some conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you would like to have a conversation with us, you can always reach us through Twitter, through email, through our website, through Facebook. Is there a Facebook?
No, there's no Facebook, but there will be.
There will be?
There's going to be...
Group.
Okay, no, there's no FetLife group either. We, okay, we're going to stop here for half a second and, address this, actually. There are several things coming that I wanted to have come, weeks and weeks and weeks ago, but with life taking on new parts of our project, it's just not the smartest thing. We had a request twice for us to form a FetLife group so that we can have conversations there, which is one of the best ideas, and I'm really excited about it. I just want to do it right. So we have not had time, but that's at the top of the list for once we get moved and settled in. So that will be done. And we will also have a proper... Maybe we do have a Facebook page. Yes, we do have a Facebook page. What am I talking about? It's been a long month.
So for right now, you can reach us on Facebook or Twitter or email.
You can.
And very soon we'll be setting up a FetLife group with places for questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
As always, if you feel our podcast has enriched your life in any way or helped you to come to terms with anything about your own self or your place in life, or even if you've just been entertained for the week, you could consider supporting us via our Patreon.
Yes.
Which links are all in the show notes.
Yes, they are. And Salem, of course, arrives to say hello as we finish up. Hello. Hi, Salem.
Goodbye.
Hey, bud. So, until next week, thank you for joining us. Bye. Make sure that everything is tickety-boo. Sorry, what did I do to you?
Nothing.
Oh, you're a brat. What did we do? Talk.
What?
Talk.
What? Oh, hi. I am speaking. Why am I a brat? Thank you for joining us this week. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Just a quick reminder that Kink Geek and everything we do is supported by you, our fantastic listeners, via our Patreon. Visit patreon.com and consider becoming a patron for access to all of our bonus content. See you next time.